Hey my friends, how's it going? It's Ultimus, and for today's video I want to go over with you guys my review of the Corsair K70 keyboard. Now I've had this keyboard for about a month now, maybe a little bit longer, so I've had some time to work with it, see how I like it, so I can give you a genuine and honest opinion and review of it, whether or not I think it's worth your time and money and effort. Before we get into the physical specs of the keyboard and all of that, I want to go over the software here, as you can see. Same exact program that was used, of course, with the Corsair Scimitar that we went over in that video months and months ago. So it's all runs the same thing, very similar to the Razer software that you have if you have any Razer products. So you'll probably be pretty familiar with how all of that works. Now, the thing with Corsair that's very, very different from Razer that I wasn't expecting when I first got my Corsair products, and which is something I did talk about when going over the mouse. But I will mention here as well, just in case you haven't seen the mouse review that I did. The Corsair software and setting up any of your hotkeys, macros, or any kind of key assignments is a lot more typical of what you would expect from Windows. Whereas Razer feels more Mac-ish, and not, I don't mean that in a condescending way, but simply Razer is very plug and go, plug and play. Everything's right there, click up a button, boom, you're on your way. Whereas Corsair is very plug it in and manually set it how you want it. So there's pros and cons to both. Now, the upside to that is with Corsair, you can immediately set up the settings that you want, rather than having to maybe mess with settings that you don't want and then undo them and then go reset them. So with the keyboard, it's a little simpler to set up than the Scimitar. The Scimitar I had to manually take over and do all of the keys, but we're not going to talk about that. If you have the K90, you will have the extra set of buttons here along the side, which will parallel, of course, with some macros that you can do and stuff like that. But I don't have that keyboard in particular. I wanted to move away from that because I was finding that as cool as they were to have on my Razer Black Widow, I used them for like 2 functions and that was about it. And since typically I would use them for mouse sensitivity, honestly, and so since I have a mouse profile set up specifically for shooters or other games that I play now, rather than just having one setting for everything, it felt a little redundant. So I just have the standard size keyboard now that we're going to go over. Again, you can do assignments to any of the buttons you want, just like anything else, with your action list, all that kind of stuff like that. There's some good tutorials out there, and I won't go into that just because this isn't a tutorial video, this is a review video. All of your lighting stuff, you can, of course, assign different keys, different lights. I have my everything else white, and then my keys here are blue, and then I've got the button up here white and all this stuff like. So you can make everything light up individually how you would like it. So if I really wanted this one up here to light up, say bright red or whatever, I could do that. And that's all there is to it, and it's kind of cool. So keep in mind, of course, the colors that are next to it on the keyboard will potentially affect how bright those colors shine, because obviously if you have a bunch of white shining around a bunch of stuff, your blues and your reds won't show up quite as vibrantly, but if the whole thing is red, it's going to be very, very red. So you can mess around with all of this as well. It's got individual groupings up here for the arrows and WASD, which is handy because those are some very core functionality pieces of key there. And then, of course, we have the performance section as well, which you can disable the Windows key, which I do by default. And we'll get into some of that a little bit later as well. Just being a gamer, you don't really want to Windows tab out of your games. You can also disable Alt F4. You can disable Alt Tab, and you can disable Shift Tab as well. I don't have either of these disabled because I rarely ever hit Alt F4 at all. I don't even use Alt as a modifier for WoW. I use Shift, so that's not a problem for me. And disable Alt Tab. I just, everything I play is windowed anyways, just about, because I have the tool monitors. I want to go back and forth between what I'm watching or doing on the second monitor over here on this side of me and whatever I'm playing here. I just have everything windowed and it's good to go. So that's not a problem for me. But if that's your jam and you want to have those disabled, you can do that as well. Obviously, you can affect actions, lightings, and settings, all of that stuff as well, which is pretty spiffy. You can edit and add stuff like whatever media players you want it to adjust and deal with as well, which is pretty cool. There are some plug-and-go features with this keyboard that are really nice. The mapping is mostly what you have to customize. So there's all of that. Behavior, you can mess with all of these settings like that, which is really, really cool. I haven't done a whole lot with, just I haven't really had a need for it necessarily. But of course you have the device here, and here you can mess with some of the settings. You can just flat out disable the lighting on the device if you want with one click. You can change how the layout works for your keyboard, which is interesting and kind of cool at the same time. Update the firmware right here with the one click, which is nifty, and I'll probably be doing that here in a second. Oh, it's doing it for me right now as we speak. Excellent. Cool. Exactly what I wanted. I didn't apparently it updated the firmware on my mouse. Cool. All right. Well, now that we got that, backup, recover, all that stuff. It's actually a really intuitive software, to be completely honest. And of course, you can set different profiles for it, which is really handy. You can upload, download, all that kind of stuff as well. So really intuitive software. I personally think the customization is great, and it's pretty easy to get into. Like I said, the mouse was a little trickier, but the keyboard's pretty straightforward. So all of that aside, we'll probably get into the keyboard now, so we can go over some of the physical specs, and of course, what the pros and cons are of it. So here we go. All right. So in the process of trying to get this set up as best as possible, to where I was able to clearly try to show off what we're talking about here and get the best video quality as well, and set up the camera in a way that's going to be workable. This is the best I could do. I had a tripod for my webcam, but I have no idea where it went off to. So we're just gonna have to make the best of what we can do here at the moment. This is a pretty ghetto setup. I was gonna try to use the light from my phone as well, but it was just too bright, and so we're gonna go for it. Hopefully everything's pretty easy to make out with what we're talking about here. I do have the keyboard turned around facing the monitor now, so you guys can see what it is I'm talking about without having to try to navigate backwards. So if I get things a little bit weird, my apologies, but I wanted to at least make sure you guys could see what I was talking about when we go over the keyboard. So obviously the big deal, of course, is what makes a keyboard special, what makes it better than just an average keyboard, what makes this better than just going to, Office Max or Walmart or Target and buying a $20 keyboard that anybody and their mother can use. Well, in some ways a lot, and in some ways absolutely nothing. All the keys are still the same. You're going to achieve the same functionality, whereas if you type the A key, you are going to type out the letter A, and the backspace is going to go back. All that stuff. The cool thing about gaming keyboards specifically is they are designed obviously with gamers in mind, and the big deal with that is of course response time, how long it takes to pick up the signal for the action you're trying to execute, and for that action to go through, and then of course execute said action in game, etc., etc. So the response time is a big deal, which has a lot to do with the switches that we're talking about here. And you're going to see a lot of this stuff talked about when you're going over keyboards. You're going to see a lot of gaming keyboards talk about which switches they use. That's going to be the cherry switches. It's going to be the cherry red, the cherry brown, all these different types of switches. And I got to be completely honest, I don't know all of them off the top of my head, so I'm not going to pretend to. But what I can tell you about the Corsair K70 keyboard is that it's fast as hell. Basically, one of the biggest adjustments I had to make getting used to this keyboard was the space bar. I would barely tap the space bar, and all of a sudden my character was jumping or doing whatever action was assigned to the space bar, and it was throwing me off. I can't tell you how many channel spells in World of Warcraft I was screwing up because I was jumping. I would get literally, because when I play, my thumb rests down here, and I got my, ready to go back and forth, pinky on shift, so my thumb's resting there, and so just because of, the being tired from trying to arch your hand up, so it would just rest down, it would barely tap the space bar, and all of a sudden my character would jump, and then there goes my Demon Hunter's Eye Beam, or, it's whatever the channeled spell is. So, that was creating some problems for me at first, and just because it was a transition. The Black Widow keyboard that I was using previously, great keyboard, have nothing bad to say about it, but definitely was not as responsive and sensitive as the Corsair K70, of course, with the newer switches, because the Black Widow I was using was the Black Widow Ultimate Stealth 2012 edition. So it's a pretty old keyboard for computer specs as far as they're concerned. I did get this keyboard back in 2016, which is kind of funny to say because it's literally only a month ago, as of the time of recording this video. So about 4 years difference in tech and stuff like that, although the K70 has been around for a little bit. This is one of the newer models though, because we're working with the chroma key stuff, which we talked about when we went over the software. You could assign it to different colors. I do have this stuff normally set up with some colors as well, but just to show you how bright it does get. It gets fairly bright, and I did turn it off for the sake of the video so that it wasn't too glaring, but Normally, I do have my stuff set up with. I'm a big fan of the white keys for whatever reason, and then I had the arrows and WASD set up with some blue, which was kind of cool for me at least. I don't know. Again, it's the little things. But for the sake of the video, obviously, as you can tell, we need to have that turned down because it's causing some focusing issues. And of course, just the glare. The glare itself is just ridiculous. So we're gonna have that bad boy turned down. It does get pretty bright, which is cool. And one thing I did forget to mention in the software is that you can adjust the lighting as well to be brighter or a little bit more dull, depending on how bright you want it or don't want it. But anyways, I digress. Sensitivity, wonderful. Again, a little bit of an adjustment at first, but if you're looking for the quick response time and whatever abilities or executions you're trying to pull off, whether it's in gaming or even if you're doing editing and stuff like that, or typing whatever it is, you're typing up that paper for a report, the response time on this keyboard is lightning fast, and I absolutely love it. Because of that, one of the biggest reasons I got this keyboard was the number one complaint I get on any of my videos that I make, aside from "you suck, why do you play games, you should unsub and stop playing," is you type too loud. It sounds like you are beating the snot out of somebody. You are punching wood whenever you type, and I do tend to type pretty heavy. I can't deny that. I just do. I'm not. I don't know. I'm not really a subtle person, so there's that. So I just have to own that. But the nice thing about with this keyboard is it's a very noticeable difference in the loudness of it. Because of the response time, I don't feel it necessary to type super hard, but I find myself able to justify typing a little bit lighter and being okay with that. And so the loudness that was coming off in videos and stuff like that, and even while streaming, has been significantly decreased. So that's nice. Also, this apparently space bar stops recording, so that's a thing. The space bar isn't as loud, which is a big deal for any game where you're doing a bunch of jumping around and stuff like that. Good times. The keyboard itself is actually very, very sturdy. It was a lot heavier than I was expecting. It actually feels like it is a solid metal of sorts. It's not really all plastic, which was a surprising turn of events. I was not expecting a metal keyboard or a solid keyboard. This front piece does come off, and as you can see, it flaps down just like that. I personally like to keep mine on. I like it as a rest for my fingers, but it does come off quite easily, which is kind of nice. Again, the loud snapping just sounds scary, but there's that where it hooks on. It is textured, so you can feel that. I don't know if you guys can see a little bit some of the textures there in the camera there off the reflections in the light. But this is what the keyboard looks like once it comes out of the box. It's pretty standard, pretty small. A lot smaller than the Razer keyboards because there's not a lot of extra stuff around the side. And I hate to be making the comparison like I'm trying to say which one's a better, Razer or Corsair, because I don't necessarily think one is better than the other, to be completely honest. This isn't a sponsor video. Nobody's paying me to do this, so this is just my personal opinion. But it is a lot smaller, so it's going to save you some space on your desk, which is nice depending on who you are. But again, solid keyboard. Like, this thing literally weighs a couple pounds. Like, I've had some pretty light keyboards, but this is probably the heaviest keyboard that I have ever had or held or touched. Like, this thing probably weighs a solid 5 pounds ish. I could probably actually check the shipping and confirm that, but I'm not going to because I threw the box away. But a very solid keyboard. You don't feel like you're playing with a chintzy toy or something cheaply made. The craftsmanship of it is actually quite nice, which is really, really cool and nice to see, at least, especially considering how much money it does retail for. So kudos there. One of the cool things that I do want to point out real quick, see if we can get this zoomed in a little bit as close as we can. If you'll notice, obviously the wire here, or the cable going out, is threaded, so it is covered in a cloth substance as well. I don't remember what exactly it is off the top of my head, but it's not just an exposed wire or a rubber or plastic coated wire, which is nice, especially if you have pets. Again, small thing, but this is something that I've learned with having 2 corgis now. But especially with the youngest one, he's in his teething stage, so we're going through all of that again. Anything that's plastic, they'll pretty much chew through very, very quickly. The little dude ruined my Xbox controller for my PC. Felt bad. He kind of shocked himself a little bit when he did it, but he chewed through it very, very quickly. With stuff like this, with the threading around it and stuff like that, it tends to be a little tougher for pets to chew through, even puppies, and puppies have very sharp teeth. So if that's a thing for you to consider, keep that in mind as well. Overall, it just helps with cable management, and it's nice and clean looking, and it does, of course, keep everything bound nicely. And I'm sure there's a lot of other practical purposes to it, but other than that, I just think it's dope looking. The keyboard itself only comes with 2 USB plugins to the computer, no microphone and headphone jack. Like some other keyboards do, but it does require 2 USB slots, so do keep that in mind when you're purchasing it. Some people have issues where they have too little open USB slots, so that's something to keep in mind. Let's see what else is worth bringing up. Obviously, a lot of stuff, but let's see if we can turn this without messing up too much stuff. So over here on the back, you'll see these 2 things back here. Obviously, the USB port, which is handy to have. If you've got like a Fitbit or something you want to keep plugged in, which is good, or your iPod is charging, or you have your iPod plugged in to listen to music, it's great as well. You can even obviously plug in an extended USB little cable thing if you want. I've got one right over here. I just unplugged it to show you. Like obviously stuff like this, you can have. This one's cool because it has like the switches on it that you can turn on and off if you prefer, if that's your jam. But anyways, so obviously that's one of the things you gotta have plugged in back there as well. And the cool thing, of course, is the BIOS switches. So if you've got any different profiles or BIOS setup like that, you can switch to those with the flip of a switch. So really, really handy there. Of course, really cool of Corsair to include that. And then, of course, you have the 2 stands on the back end here, one on each side, where you can do that to stand the keyboard up. And there is the 2 here in front as well. I'm trying to set this down because I don't want it to stop recording or do anything accidentally. But if you want the keyboard to stand up a little bit higher, you can do that as well, which is pretty spiffy as well. Again, a lot of stuff you come to expect with the keyboard. It's got, of course, all the standard stuff, but all the bells and whistles as well. And of course, if you have both of those in, you can't really see it, but it does. It gives it a solid, 1/4 inch lift off of the desk or whatever surface you have it on, if that's a preference of yours. Some people like their keyboards higher. I tend to not to, because if it makes me cock my wrist back a little bit more than normal, it tends to be a little uncomfortable, so I tend to not have any of those things set up and plugged in. I do have it just resting right on the desk as is, and I do okay with it. The spacebar itself is textured, and it did come with some extra keys and a key remover if you wanted to replace the WASD and the arrow keys as well. I haven't really had a need for it yet. They are textured, and they do sell extra key packs as well, which I thought was interesting. I didn't know about until I was at the store. I was perusing through Best Buy one day, and it was like, oh dang, there's some extra keys that you can buy with different colors on it. So that's a thing, but they're textured. I find I do okay with them just as is. Having the spacebar textured is enough for me, and it's cool. Of course, now we have the media keys up here, which I can't zoom in any farther, unfortunately. So it's just going to have to be what it is. Of course, you have the stuff over here for your brightness that you can adjust right on the keyboard itself without even going into your profile settings in the Corsair utility engine itself. So that's pretty handy. 1, 2, 3 settings. Goes in 33% increments, so that's kind of cool. One of my favorite ones, of course, is the turn the Windows button on and off. Red is still on, so if I hit the Windows key there, my Windows thing pops up. You can't see it because we're using the webcam. And when it's blue, means the Windows key is disabled and the Windows doesn't pop up. You can, of course, change that color if you prefer, but blue and red work for me just fine. Of course, your num lock, caps lock, and scroll lock, all that good stuff. Not utility, your media buttons up here, of course. You have stop, back, play, pause, forward. Pretty spiffy. You can change the colors of those as well if you prefer. And one of my favorite little things, and this is a really silly thing to be very excited about, obviously you have the mute button up here, so you can do that, mute your sound, all that, cool. But it's got this little wheel up top here, which again, probably should have read more about this keyboard so I knew this was coming, but when I got the keyboard, I was just kind of like, oh, what's that? And I messed with it, and this is actually a little wheel to adjust your sound on the fly, so it literally adjusts it in about 2% increments up to 100%, obviously. Just scroll up to turn it up and down to turn it off. So kind of cool that that's right there on the keyboard if you want, rather than just going into all your sound settings or even just turning down your speakers, whatever it is. So pretty big fan of that. Little stuff like this makes me happy, and it's silly stuff to get excited about, I know, but anything that gives me more options on my keyboard like this right away, nifty, cool stuff. Overall, my thoughts on the keyboard. Great keyboard, love it. Definitely pricey. Definitely pricey. The version of this keyboard that I purchased, again, being the Corsair Gaming K70 RBG Rapidfire mechanical keyboard, backlit RBG LED Cherry MX Speed RBG. All those fancy letters mean basically it was $149.99. Is it worth the money? Is a gaming keyboard worth your time and your money? Personally, I mean, I think so. This is the second one I bought, but I think ultimately that's up to you. If you want all the bells and whistles, if you want something that is very, very sturdy, and that's not to say that anything else you'll buy is crap. I'm sure there's plenty of other great keyboards out there you could get. You could even get, a cheaper Corsair one. I'm looking at one right now. It's the K70 Rapidfire backlit red. So Cherry MX Speed. It's just a couple fancy colors, shine, some other things, but it's just like it's $100, so it's like you don't need to obviously spend the 140, 150 bucks on a keyboard, but I enjoy it. I like it. Great keyboard. Probably, honest to God truth, probably one of the better keyboards I've ever used, and I'm actually enjoying it now that I've got the feel of it down. Obviously the first couple days to a week, I say couple days, were a bit rough, just trying to learn the mapping of it and getting used to not having all of the extra buttons over here on the side made the keyboard feel really awkward. So I'd go to hit like WASD or whatever, and I'd be on QW tab A or whatever it is, and so my key inputs were all over the place. Typing was awkward, and I looked like someone who'd never used a keyboard before. But again, love it. The utility of it's great. The customization on it is great. Very solid keyboard, easy to use. I don't feel like it's going to break on me. I don't feel like I'm holding just a toy or anything like that. So very good keyboard. Definitely recommend it. If you're skeptical, go down to your local Best Buy and tinker around on it for a little bit. See how you feel about it. Usually they have it set up on display, and whatever your local computer store is, they probably have one set up on display for you to check out. I think it's great. Again, overall, pretty quiet keyboard. Pretty easy to use, very responsive, and Corsair's customer service is great too. So if you happen to get one that's a little funky and not working as you thought it would, it's pretty easy to get in contact with them and have them replace it for you. So good stuff. Overall, great keyboard, easy to use, fun to use. I don't feel like it's going to break on me. A lot of good utility behind it, and it just does what it's supposed to do. In my opinion, worth the 140 bucks, 150 bucks. I'd probably buy it again if I could, except I'd like to think that by the time I'm ready to get a new keyboard, I'll be ready to try something different, just for the sake of keeping an open mind. But that's pretty much it for this video, guys. Let me know if you have any questions. I'll be more than happy to answer them for you. Hopefully the awkward angles wasn't too strange for you guys, and you're able to see what exactly it is I'm talking about and pointing it out here. This is the best way I can think of to do this video. But anyways, thank you again so much for watching. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed it. Of course, leave any suggestions for any videos that you want to see coming up soon, whether it's Overwatch stuff, World of Warcraft, or even possibly some reviews of some other equipment I have. I don't got a whole lot, but I got some. Yeah, that's about it. Baby will be here this weekend, so there might not be any videos for a couple days. Just heads up. Talked about that in the vlog, so I feel like I've braced you guys enough for those of you guys that are frequent flyers here. But yeah, so that's all I'm going to say on that. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.